So Luis and Massimiliano today will try to outline the future of the LB sector in the next coming months and years, and the way the industry will restart, will change. Thank you again for joining us. And now I pass the microphone to Luis and Massimiliano. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, for the gracious introduction. And it's great to see you, Massimiliano, and the audience to have the discussion today.
Thank you, Luis, and grazie, Francesco, for having us here virtually, but in full spirit, full body and full spirit, to share some thoughts we have. And I know that, Luis, you've prepared something specifically to share, so we will start a bit of a discussion around some keywords. So the idea for us was not to give, rules, like nobody knows, honestly, what will happen, but we have a bit of experience in this industry, and we want to share an international view of what we think will be some of the tracks to
absolutely. Lately we've heard in the last couple of weeks, as we move toward this reopening, we've gone through this amazing experience, and that we're in a stage of kind of another level of this change and development. We've heard a lot about government policy in terms of safety, gloves, masks, a potential queue line. Those things are in development, and hopefully today through these keywords in our discussion, we can broaden the discussion a little more holistically and look at the industry and the business models that are going to be adapting and changing.
Yeah, our idea is really not to again talk about hand sanitizers, which is really, really important, but you are so much informed right now. We don't have anything, I think, to teach, but we want a little bit to go through some of these keywords. Luis, what would you like to start with? Maybe uncertainty, I think is the one we could get started with. So you are an operator, you are a supplier, so how are you surfing right now through this uncertain time, and what do you think will be a different way to surf through uncertainty?
Well, I think, all of us are facing a question collectively about how does our business restore confidence to the consumer? How do we move forward with our employees and teams? And how does our business model survive and thrive in a very challenging economic situation? We're looking ahead to kind of trying to relaunch our experiences. And as a supplier, I want to make sure that we're there to support our clients and the destinations as best possible, because their success, is ultimately necessary for our success. So wherever we can facilitate that is important. And we're exploring, different variations in the location-based entertainment industry about different kinds of locations, how that will impact them, and very specifically in terms of operations and business model, thinking about how there will be changes to attractions, retail, resorts, accessibility, and in terms of what kind of profitability will be necessary to support that, and how the guest perception of these experiences will impact their participation with the industry.
And it's really interesting to me. You've mentioned many things, but two of them at the very last are two notes that I really took. One is about profitability, and the other is really about like the guest, not only experience we will be able to deliver, but like the guest intention to visit. And when it comes to malls and to shopping destinations or retailtainment destinations, okay, I see now. I can just share what I'm seeing through all across Europe when it comes to parks, for instance, and there are, I think, two kinds of facilities. Some facilities, I would say maybe already half of the facilities, to simplify, are trying to understand as soon as possible what will be the requirements to be able to reopen. The other half is thinking, I want to find the best way to understand if the people will visit me once I will be open. Because then the big question is, we can again keep everything even safer than it was before. And we know that both the retail industry and the parks industry, these are two very safe industries. I don't want to say the safest industries, but among the safest industries. So the point for us is just to upgrade a little bit what we are doing from a service standpoint, to reassure people and to keep everybody safe. But the point is there a demand right now? And when will we have a clear idea about the demand? And when will the demand we used to know come back again?
Certainly. Well, I mean, I think what we're going to experience, and I think this is a key point that I'd like everyone to think about today and take away, is that, you know, this first group of people that's going to return are the most loyal customer that you have. You know, these are people who see you as so important that in this time of absence, the first people to return are the ones who see you as the most important thing in their life that was missing. So, you know, in terms of addressing those guests, we want to make sure that we give them great service, we show appreciation to them, and that we also, in terms of training, this is very important that the frontline employees are seen as ambassadors to the brand, because it's very important to kind of get that communication out. In terms of capacity and in terms of demand, I think it's very important that this is initially, it's a question of psychology and perception. You know, in many ways, our industries, you know, retail, sports, location-based entertainment, zoos, theme parks, have been very safe places that we've taken a lot of kind of the back of house element of what we do to protect people and keep it hidden from view. There may be a sensibility right now from a perception standpoint to create a sense of confidence psychologically to the guests, that we need to bring some of that forward so that the guests can see that and understand how that's initiated. We need to make sure that we communicate those processes, not in a necessarily scientific step-by-step way, but in a way that they understand that they're heard, that they're seen, and that they're engaged. And that I think the guest from a perception standpoint has the ability to give you feedback, which I think, again, reiterates that these first guests that are coming, these loyal guests, will be the best possible group of participants to give you immediate feedback that you can adjust and help grow your experience in terms of the guests, and then grow the word of mouth that they feel comfortable, that begets comfort in the community, and then grows that as there's a general comfort in the entire population.
This touches a great point, because when we talk about appreciating the guests and we talk about word of mouth, many industries were able over the last years to really do this shift from target to persona. And this marketing shift to personas keeps into account that no place and no service is the same for everybody. It's like ecumenical. Can I say ecumenical? I don't know. I just invented this word in English from the Italian, but it's like, you know, one size does not fit all. Sure. And when I think about, so I'm part of the consultancy team of TRADELAB, and we have been working with many shopping malls all over the last years. And one of the questions is, what is the leisure that fits for us? And sometimes it's not just one formula, it's a mix of different elements that come together. And I've seen also that there is this kind of idea, but it's still far away in a way, that the managers and the directors of shopping malls right now, so far, have perceived themselves much more into the coordination of facilities versus the people orientation, which we are used to in our industry, because we know that ultimately a park or an attraction general manager is a people lover, and he or she has a spatial radar to treat each and every person differently, and to teach and and train teams to treat them differently. So when you've mentioned that the first people that will visit again a mall will be the ones that have a deeper affection, this is so true. And if we think about one of the pictures we are showing here, which is local, I'm reading more and more and more on the stock market analysis and articles and so on, that people will shop more local in a way, and will want more truth. And truth comes with the relationship. Correct. And so the point and the provocation that I think we should be thinking about is how can we turn the malls into places where everybody that visits the mall is part of a relationship and not of a sales pitch, which has been a little bit what had happened over the years. What do you think about this switch between?
Well, absolutely. I think it's very interesting. You know, retail has been, you know, facing a number of challenging headwinds over the last several years, where there has been an exploration in different phases of the increase of looking at food and beverage options, entertainment options. I think what we have right now, and this crisis represents an incredible opportunity, is to look at this in terms of an overall blend of changes, in terms of looking at this as a community hub. You know, the people who are managing the malls are now in many ways at shopping centers, various destinations, need to look at themselves as mixed use destinations in terms of welcoming the community, being a community center, being a place where the community feels they can get together in a safe environment, that they're welcomed. We need to look at it in terms of taking some of those hospitality elements of a resort, of a destination, of a theme park, and introducing them to these locations where they're able to be welcomed, greeted, understand how the environment is, how the common spaces can be worked collectively amongst all of the leaseholders. Because, you know, previously we have in the retail sector, a kind of a different relationship between the leaseholder, you know, the property owner, and the tenants. Where in location-based entertainment institutions, there's more of a partnership that's there. There's some modification to the business model here where, you know, the landholder, the property owner, you know, they need to make quality value on their rent. And we need to make sure that they don't lose their tenants in this scenario to create the value for their rent scenario. So we need to find maybe a new business model where some of the risk is shared amongst those parties to ensure mutual success. And I would say from an adaptability standpoint, you know, survival of the fittest is not necessarily about the strongest or the smartest. It's about those that can adapt most readily to the scenario. And I think what we need to see is a lot of innovation and exploration and testing of different models and trying different things regionally, internationally, to see what works in each area. Because as you mentioned, with one size not fitting all, what will work locally in different areas of Europe or Asia or in the United States or South America will vary even region by region within those areas about how that can be modified and implemented.
And it makes me think, you've mentioned also F&B, and so we have seen all over Europe at least, but also in the United States, but in Europe it was really massive. Like I went to Finland a couple of months ago, and there is one beautiful shopping mall next to Helsinki, and they have a food court which is really mind-blowing. You know, it's like a street, you know, it's like a city street. Full of different restaurants and outlets. But one thing that, let me bring Starbucks as an example. And I see Starbucks because if I think about Starbucks 20 years ago, it brought really higher quality to the entire coffee shop, cafes and bars industry, because they standardized some of the process, and they took some insights they had, like cozy places where you can stay longer and you have plugs for the PCs and whatever, you know, and friendly stuff and so on. And so this was kind of a first wave. What I see right now is that there is another second wave that arrived, where local and independent operators got so much better than Starbucks in creating connection and creating value for the communities. So now, right now, one thought is really, I go to the parks. And in the parks, I would say that 98% of our F&B outlets are operated by the parks themselves. So these are not part of external brands. Right. So in a way, we already incorporated this thing that F&B is not like an ancillary, it's like part of the experience. So what if in the malls, in the shopping malls over the last 2 to 3 to 5 years, there was this counterwave arriving, and we will see less chains and more truth. So more things that are developed either with local operators or by as you said, by the properties themselves. So how do you see this kind of, because we have been discussing this for attractions as well, you know, but how do you see it in F&B or in other sectors as well?
Well, I mean, I think and I think it's not only in terms of retail, but I think institutional. And we think about museums or some of those other leisure elements that are out there that are facing these same kinds of challenges. These kinds of moments of authenticity and differentiation and service and quality, those that are able to establish a higher level of service, a higher level of and I say authenticity, and not so much in a fake authenticity, and something that's true to what their brand is, what their brand storytelling is, and what their mission, vision, and values are, which I think is very important. You know, those companies right now that understand that examine their mission, vision, and values, and their brand storytelling, and their relationship with their consumer, and understand where they stand with their consumer, are those that are best positioned moving forward to make adjustments in that dialogue and that relationship to ensure success. And so I think in terms of elevating their experience, creating a higher quality of experience, that's really important and powerful to ensure their success going forward. You know, we have a situation which we haven't talked about yet, but you know, people are facing large-scale unemployment. They're going to be very selective with the dollars that they have to spend and where they choose to spend that. So when they make those choices between now, you know, the changes in digital entertainment, in-home entertainment, and out-of-home entertainment, you're really going to have to provide something substantial that they want to choose to participate and spend their money with you. So you have to look at, you know, these kind of passé experiences or ones that don't add value to their life. They're going to pass by on those and they're not going to flourish. So, I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you look at that in-home, out-of-home entertainment and how that kind of economic situation is going to help influence those choices.
Totally, and you have touched a key point, because when we talk about home entertainment, we know that right now it's much more affordable than it used to be 15 years ago to have amazing home entertainment and to have so many different services merging and converging together. So I would provoke by saying that when you go outside and you leave home, it can't be less social and it can't be less wow. So the point is not only the experience, but what leads to the experience. So so often we see standalone attractions, for instance, in malls or in other situations, where the whole check-in part, you know, how do you see it from outside and the way you approach that and how people are dressed and what is the lighting system and the theming and the story. Like you don't start a story from the first touch point you have, but you have a lot of touch points which are pretty neutral, and then there is a story if you kind of reach it. And I think that if it's still like that, it's better to stay home. So the point is, it's like saying until you press the Netflix play button, you're out of the movie. But what we can do as attractions and what destinations can do is try to understand how they can emerge even more people inside this fun and engagement and atmosphere and smells and sounds and so on, so much before the actual thing they are paying for is there. If I think about Rainforest Cafe, I'm all about change today, and I think about Rainforest Cafe. When you enter, you know, like the lobby, you are already in the rainforest. Like you don't wait to be inside the restaurant and to have a seat. So you are still kind of sneezing this experience. You are already a bit part of it. So I think we need, of course, to have this kind of integration. And on the other thing, I'd like to yes with the deeper why. Many times, and I think that we all also as consultants should reflect even deeper on that. We are telling a marketing story, which doesn't work from an emotion story point of view. And so we think that, if I count all the attractions that have as a theme a bacteriological attack, and now we are inside something like this because we have a virus, and are people really attracted by that? Will people be attracted still by catastrophes that much? Or what will be a different level? So what is the why? What do you said, what do those places stand for? So what do we stand for? And you as an attraction and experiences designer, how do you think we can integrate a deeper why so much more into the experience versus, just telling a nice story, which might look like 200 series on Netflix that you can watch at home?
Agreed. Well, before I answer that, I do want to touch on one thing that you mentioned that I think is very important, is the customer journey. We have to really think about what the customer journey is from beginning to end. Previous to this event, I think it would be fairly realistic to say that we think marketing, social media, and the experience were in many ways siloed. They were integrated components by touch points for driving sale, but that the messages were inconsistent throughout. What we've seen during the last 8 weeks is that e-commerce has driven those silos into a single unit integrated together, so that social media has been the experience that's kept people in touch with these brands and these stories and these elements. Virtual tours to museums, a virtual tour to a store, looking at a product, how the ability to purchase, has been ubiquitous around the world for people to purchase these elements online, and how the brands have rapidly tried to work into adopting an omni-channel strategy for performing that. We need to take a lesson from that and adapt that going forward to each of our destinations about ensuring that the customer journey and those messages are as seamless and unified as possible, to ensure that from the moment they pick up their telephone, and or that's how many people are accessing the information, that brand synergy and the way your storytelling is working from a brand element experiential component, all those touch points are really thought out through that, the entire customer journey, from the moment they hear about you, your name, to arriving, to purchase, to pick up, to exit, to an after experience in terms of feedback and content. In terms of story and content, I personally, I'm very passionate about trying to expand the nature of story and what we're telling in the world. And I really believe that, retail entertainment, location-based entertainment are the model to which we can change the entire world. And I know people may think I'm insane when I say that, but we design things and build things that show up on a napkin, and then we realize them, we make them functional business models, and millions of people are influenced and inspired by them. So I think that there's an opportunity that we have right now in a world that's rapidly changing, whether that's from a virus or climate change or other social issues like stratification of economic class, which I think this scenario is going to drive that significantly, automation, those other kinds of things, that we have the ability to broaden the stories that we tell, to create human connection, and to take it beyond, just everything having to run around, fight, and explode, to tell other kinds of stories that can be equally as entertaining, fascinating, and as enriching as those. And I think what's been interesting when you look at the data so far as feedback on this event, many people's priorities have shifted a bit in terms of reevaluating the importance of their family, the connection of their friends, those things that they see of value and importance around them. Leading up to this, we're all running around distracted with 10 million things happening. And for the challenges that this event has been, it's also given us all an opportunity to reevaluate, which I think gives us new opportunity to explore different kinds of stories and experiences that we can provide guests to engage in.
And Luis, I know we have to wrap up very soon. I'd like to take something to spread, you know, hope and curiosity. I would say that right now, more than saying, you know, the future is risky, the future is hopeful, I would say it should be full of curiosity. And what I take really home from what you said is we can pose ourselves questions. And the question is, how will we be remarkable? How will we be worth mentioning, worth telling friends? You know, how will we impact the world differently? Because this resonates with the deeper values we have, with family connection and so on. So this is my point of view.
Thank you, Massimiliano. Thank you, Luis. That's time is quite over. So now we have some questions from the audience and from myself as well. So a first question for both of you. You start talking. Well, I think that Massimiliano says something about it. But do you think that the fact that some landlords could become operator could become a main trend in this industry or not, especially in the retail and shopping mall part of the industry?
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you think that landlords could become operator as well of attraction?
Oh, if I might just take that first. Yeah, I think that in some ways they have to become that. I mean, when we look at American Dream to a degree, I think they're trying to pioneer that sense of a model where they're acting more as an operator. You know, the project in New Jersey represents a much deeper exploration on their part of providing a very large entertainment base. You know, between 55 and 70% of that property is entertainment oriented, community oriented. So I think whether they become an operator or they become a participant or partner with an operator to work with their tenants is important to the overall success of those destinations, and not looking at it only as a landlord and tenant relationship.
I would love to piggyback, Luis, and in fact, this is necessary. And if I could give an advice to the landlords right now is, while your shopping malls are closed, send virtually all your people to go and get trained to become the future mayors of cities versus, you know, real estate managers, because this will be really, really key. And a big part of the profitability will come from operating directly, because of course leisure won't be able to pay the rent, we all know, but right now even retailers will no longer be able to pay those rents in the near future. So the sooner everybody gets trained in how to open up for opportunities, the better it is.
And do you think, because you were mentioning American Dream 555 in New Jersey, it seems that they start having or planning to have a 70-30 mix entertainment to retail. Now they switch much more on the retail to entertainment. What do you think will be the norm in the next future for this kind of project? If there is a norm, it's possible to set.
If I can just get started, and I'm just talking about the European region. So, and I think, Luis, you have more stories also from the United States and Asia. What I see is that over the last year, so before COVID, I've heard so many properties just saying, okay, we have empty spaces and like very, very high-end empty spaces, and we start to think we should put in there a place for people to have fun, stay, and, you know, and reposition in a way that in some of our countries were the hypermarkets before, or the big surfaces. So I think that this trend will be a growing trend. Only there is an asterisk. The attractions that are able to work on high season all day long or all year long are really a few, just a few. So there is no comparison, because an indoor attraction is different from an outdoor attraction, and they are not competitors because they operate in different moments of the year, which most are not used to. So I think that there has to come also some deeper knowledge about the fact that what you can expect from leisure is different from what you can expect from retail.
Okay.
And I would add to that. I mean, I think there are some challenges. You know, when we look at the revenue model. And I think it's important to think also in the future about changing the business model from publicly traded, stockholder-driven value to understanding as privately owned companies how to deal with their financing and to sustain in a challenging market. I would say the one challenge I see with where I think can be solved locally, which I think is substantially something of value that people can learn from Europe and apply to Asia and the United States, is looking in terms of not everything having to be high capacity and high ticket price, which I think that's the one challenge in this environment the American dream is going to face, is that they need, like a theme park, they will need a certain number of people and a certain ticket price to sustain their operational model, where regional locations, I think, will have some benefit to flexibility with that kind of pricing and business model scenario and how to sustain their overall market share.
So I mean, no general rules, but you know, adapt to the model, local versus big players. Okay, more global, regional. Okay.
And I would say, I think in the short term, in the next, say 6 to 18 months, I think that regional locations will have a substantial advantage because there are less barriers to entry. They will not require airplane travel, hotel, etc. And that we'll have to look to the 12 to 18-month mark to see how international destinations are faring when they can kind of overcome some of those travel difficulties.
I think that with this crisis, we are rediscovering our roots and the importance of being local while we were in a global war. So we have time just for the last question. I know that there are lots, but just one question to talk about profitability. So as a question, how we can motivate investors to follow us in our project right now in this scenarios of post-COVID world, and with probably different models and different kind of profitability that we're used to have.
Well, I mean, I think fortune favors the bold. We have a scenario now. We're facing a global crisis that none of us of our age have experienced before. But when we look historically at events like the World War, things before, we've always come out of it with success. Entertainment, retail have always flourished. Restaurants have flourished. I think that what you're going to find is that there'll be now room for new brands, new thinking, new business models, new investors that come in and help reinvigorate these markets in the future, creating new opportunity and new avenues.
Okay.
If I can add to that, I think that we will all become startuppers. So the point is that we are starting everybody almost at the same time from the whole world. And of course, there are the ones that have more competitive advantage, but there are many players that might have even bigger opportunities because they are smaller and because they are faster and because they can react. So the cycles that will happen over the next years will be much shorter cycles. So it's very hard to say, okay, I'm doing an investment that will last forever. And we need to adapt more and so be so much quicker. I would say that startups.
And I would add to that, I think we need to think in terms of long-term relationships. There's been a lot of transactional thinking the last few years. And I think what needs to be formed are kind of, when you think about these commitments, that you're forming a long-term relationship together to explore these kinds of avenues.
It's true. This is a very last question before leaving you. This question from Mark. They say that's a lot of out-of-home experience based around social and group interaction. So do you have a sense on how social distancing and safety might be maintained without ruining these elements? So we could still have fun with social distancing.
Yeah. I would love to answer from an operational standpoint, which is the vast majority of my experience. And I have, first of all, we are between operators, so I want to share a bad news. And the bad news is that at the beginning, it will be hard. It will be hard because we don't know yet. 100%, nobody knows what is a bit too dangerous, what is not. So we will have to stick to rules. And this will give us the time to understand how people move and how they behave. Now, the point is that in most cases, people, when they go out, they want sociality. So the point is that we will need to make sure we don't ruin the magic, as Mark said, in a way. And thank you for the question. So let's say that in the long term, there might be a way of reinventing smaller scale situations. But most of the times we are seeing, and we have been seeing in our industry already, that there were many situations. Like I think about horror houses and horror mazes, you know, total different way. But there, the magic happens because you are part of a very tiny group. You are going there with 2 friends, or escape rooms. So the point is just that we can take inspiration from attractions and experiences that are successful because you have a much more personalized experience when you are a smaller amount of people at the same time. So I think this is a way of looking at it. So
thank you very much to our friends. Now the time is over for this session. So thank you again, Massimiliano. Thank you again, Luis. And as you see on the screen, we look forward to welcome you for our next session. It will be next week on Wednesday, 13 at 4 p.m. Central Europe time, and we will have the pleasure to welcome Charles Reed. I know that is listening to us today. That will have a talks with Eddie Kimsley, that is the CEO of Dreamland Mergates and Heritage, on recovering from COVID. There was some insight from the attraction industry. It's on the same kind of conversation we had today, with some more insight probably. And you can register on our website. You can register following us on the social media. So thank you very much again, and take care, stay safe. Bye bye.